The eighth type of event is called a project pitch. This is very linked to the hackathon, but in that case, we only take the last part of it, where entrepreneurs, where associations, where people who have projects in the city come and pitch in front of a large audience. Usually we are talking about 50 to 200 people in a big room, and the event would last around 3 hours. One of the biggest pitch sessions in the world is organized at the Web Summit in Portugal. So we put a short video of a pitch if you would like to see what it means. It's usually 3 minutes maximum of presentation of a project with a jury on stage that will evaluate which one is best. At the end of it, we pick up the winner and offer him a reward.
Next up is Wavy, who offer multi-screen advertising solutions. Please welcome to the stage co-founder and CTO, Alex Kendall.
I'm going to show you the first time a self-driving car has learned how to drive. This car starts off knowing nothing about the world. In fact, it just does random steering actions. Every time it makes a mistake or tries to drive off the road, the safety driver intervenes and takes over. With each experience, it tries to drive a little bit further and get a little bit better each time. You can see after a few bits of data, it hasn't learned to drive and drives off the road. So what do? We keep training it, and we give it a bit more experience. Now you can see it's learned a driving policy that starts to correct, and it wiggles back and forth, but is ultimately unstable and drives off the road. So let's keep training it. What's really exciting here is that we haven't told this car what a road is, or what physics are. It's learned entirely from scratch. After just 10 minutes of experience, our car has learned how to drive. This is the first time deep reinforcement learning has been used for autonomous driving. So at Wave, we believe robotics is going to be the next technology to massively revolutionize society. But in self-driving, we've seen all the incumbent companies focus on brute forcing a solution with HD maps, copious amounts of sensors, and hand-coding rules for how the car should behave. This might give us autonomy in a small geo-fenced area in an affluent city like San Francisco, but it's not going to scale to the world. It's not going to bring us autonomy in Europe or in places like my hometown in New Zealand. So that's why we're building an AI-first robotics company. We want our cars to scale to the world. With a few $1 million in seed funding, we've assembled a team of 20 world-leading experts in machine learning and robotics. Our next challenge is to scale this technology because we want to be the first to deploy our cars in 100 cities, not just one. So how do we do it? Well, we rely on computer vision to see the world around us in all weathers. And we want our car to have the intelligence and the understanding to make its own decisions based on what it sees. Self-driving is a really hard problem, and we just don't think it's possible to hand-code a solution that scales to the world. That's why we're relying on machine learning in order to learn how to drive. We believe machine learning will allow us to scale self-driving and deliver autonomy to everyone around the world. And that's what our mission is at Wave. Thank you.
Fantastic. I have to first apologize. I feel a lot like Ron Burgundy up here over the last 20 minutes. It's been a very zany experience. You did it. That was absolutely fantastic, and congratulations. So over to our esteemed panel of judges.
So can you go into a little bit of, once I train it, so you have to give a human to train it first, and then it can ride on any road, or and how far can it go, and do you have to, how many times does a human have to train it first?
Sure. So we rely on a number of sources of data, but we can try and copy how humans drive, but that only gets us so far. What reinforcement learning allows us to do is we can learn from mistakes when the safety driver takes over, and when we see a lot of intervention data in self-driving, we rely on that feedback to try and improve. And the idea is that the car will be able to drive based on just what it sees and a satellite navigation signal, like you might drive if you go to a new city. That will allow it to drive in places it hasn't seen before without relying on an HD map.
how many miles do you think you need to drive for the system to have taught itself sufficiently to let it go on its own?
Sure. So I think validation of these systems is an incredibly complex question. I think there's a clear series of stages that we need to bring autonomy to the world. But let's not kid ourselves. No one has the technology today to deliver autonomous driving. I think it's a real question of developing the capabilities. And I think that what's clear is that in a few decades, it's not going to be the paradigm where we drive by telling the car how to deal with all the edge cases. Because the real challenge in self-driving is the obscure scenarios that occur on a weekly basis that we see. Hand-coding away a rule for how to deal with these just doesn't generalize the world. And that's why we think we need a smarter way of learning to deal with that and to be more intelligent rather than just brute forcing it with millions and millions of miles.
And do you need to do the miles that you're doing physically, or can you do them in a virtualized scenario?
Absolutely. I think simulation is going to be key to be able to scale this. We have some very, very exciting results that allow us to train in simulation, because that's another thing that I don't know of anyone who's developing technology that's trained in simulation. And I think that is going to be a real key part of the future. And what we're seeing out of a lot of the AI teams around the world, but it's yet to come into the robotics sphere. So I think simulation is key.
I have actually two questions that are somehow related. The first is, as you're working on the product, how do you build trust with sometimes it's the consumer or eventually who's going to buy your product? And second, you mentioned you're going to scale to 100 cities. How do you look at the regulation in each of the cities? Sure.
So I think trust comes from a number of avenues. Firstly, is it's got to come from performance. Our cars, it can't be like the reports we've had from Waymo and Phoenix, where the cars just stop in the middle of the road and they behave obscurely. We need more intelligent cars that can make their decisions that are effective for humans. And I think trust primarily will come from performance. And that needs to be something that's strongly considered when we roll out this technology. Your second question?
Regulations.
Regulation. So again, I think regulation is going to be one that we need something that works, and I think we need to pioneer a technology solution that it can actually function and give society what it needs. Because mobile robotics is going to be, it's a new technology era. We've had databases, we've had smartphones, but mobile robotics is going to open up a number of avenues to society, and we've got to make sure that they behave appropriately, and that's going to come through demonstration of advanced technology.
Fantastic, Alex. Please give a huge round of applause for Wayve.
Thank you.
The audience is usually young adults, and seniors, mostly people interested in entrepreneurship or the topic of the pitch, like fashion or public service or financial regulation, for instance, whatever things your entrepreneurial neighborhood and people can bring on the table and on stage. The preparation will be around 2 months for 2 people working in partnership with a local association. And what you want is to find a great space, like an incubator or an accelerator or a public room, eventually a large conference center if you're dreaming big. The cost would probably be around 10 euros. Most of the participants will come for free, but you want to provide the light catering like beers and pizza, something that makes people very much enjoy the night. Marketing would be one of the costs, obviously, to tell people that the event exists. The special thing about this is that Project Pitch and Startup Pitch are very known as something called demo days. So they already exist everywhere in the world. And if you have a local fabric of entrepreneurs, of scientists, of schools, people who do things, doers and makers, they would very much be attracted to that. Via the association or Eventbrite or Meetup or the cultural agenda, you can find the best way of promoting this sort of events. We will come back later on what Eventbrite, Meetup and can bring to you if you are not yet knowing these platforms, but you will see they are already very, very active in this field. The PR outputs of that could be if politicians and local figures attend, you will probably generate a decent local coverage. So politicians in particular, if they are, you can have the mayor of your town, for instance, will very much invest 3 hours of his own time to come and drive other journalists to join the whole event. Take care. Don't improvise. Stick to standards. Usually the maximum amount of time for a pitch is 6 minutes. Make it competitive. So there is some sort of awards, people want to participate to win the competition. And in a sense, there is an emulation, an inspiring thing brought by the venue. So it's partly a placebo effect, but if it takes place in an incubator or very sort of tech-driven environment, people would love and keep that memory for a long time. The shortcut then for reaching that is to partner with the best co-working spaces in your region or in your city, recruit projects among your local contacts and the universities, incubators, and let them bring their own thing on stage, take care of the logistics, make it happen. We've shared with you an article on how to run a demo day pitch. So this is the entire session described step by step. If you're interested in this sort of event, check this article, read it entirely. The measure of success would be more than 150 people coming to see 6 to 10 project pitch. Politicians and VIP attend with local journalists as well. The winning project gets an article in the local journal or a TV report. That would be amazing. A measure of non-success would be around only 30 people are interested. They already know each other. The projects are not very good. They are poorly presented. And the winning project does not get anything. There's no VIP present. You lost a little bit of time in that case. So aim for the best. If you partner with great associations, you will get to measure of success.